Ready to dive into a math problem that's more exciting than it
I
sounds.
love those. What do we have today?
Today, we're tackling how to calculate 15% of 50. But, and this is key, it's not about finding the answer.
It's about the journey, right? Exploring how many paths lead us there.
Exactly. This all spun out of a discussion on the Math Strat Chat podcast. Math educators Pam Harris and Kim Montague put it out there, and listeners went wild with different solutions.
I'm already intrigued. A simple problem, but endless possibilities.
Totally. So let's start with Kim Montague's approach. She calls it 5 is half of 10. Basically, she uses familiar percentages as stepping stones.
So using what we already know to figure out the unknown. I like it.
Right. So first she figures out 10% of 50, which is, of course, 5.
Moneysies.
And then she points out 5% is just half of 10%.
Makes sense, yeah.
So 5% of 50 would be half of 5, which is 2.5.
Elegant.
And to wrap it all up, we know 15% is simply 10% plus 5%, so you add those results, 5 plus 2.5, and boom, 7.5.
Beautiful. It's like breaking down a complex recipe into easy steps.
Now, get ready for a bit of a mind bend with Pam Harris's method. It involves this thing called the commutative property of multiplication. Sounds fancy, but it's pretty straightforward.
Oh, I've heard of this. It's like saying the order you multiply numbers doesn't change the outcome.
You've got it.
Yeah.
So instead of 15% of 50, Pam flips it around, calculates 50% of 15.
Now that's clever, but how would someone even think to do that?
It's about truly grasping those core mathematical principles,
Yeah.
recognizing you can rearrange the problem without changing the underlying relationship.
Right, because 15% of something is basically taking 15% of each individual unit and adding it all up.
Exactly. And we all know 50% is just half. So half of 15, easy peasy, 7.5.
Amazing. It's like finding a shortcut through a maze. Who knew such a simple property could unlock that?
And that's what makes this so fascinating. There's not just one right way. Each method highlights a different mathematical principle in action.
It's like having different tools in your problem-solving toolkit.
Exactly. And that's what we'll be unpacking even further, so stay tuned.
And the best part is, we're just getting started. There are even more ways to solve this.
Seriously. More ways than those two.
Oh yeah, we're talking a whole buffet of strategies. Like this next one, it's all about breaking down percentages even further, instead of tackling 15% all at once.
Yeah, that can seem a bit daunting sometimes.
Right, so we break it down. Think of it as 3 groups of 5%.
Okay, I'm following. So then we just figure out 5% and multiply.
You got it. We already know 10% of 50 is 5. So 5% is just half of that, right? Which is 2.5.
Right, 2.5, I'm with you.
And since we want 15%, we just multiply that 2.5 by 3 because we've got 3 groups. And voila, we land back at our trusty 7.5.
See, I like that. It makes it so visual. Like, I can practically see those 3 groups of 2.5.
Exactly. It makes the math feel more tangible, less abstract. And speaking of making it real, there's another strategy that uses 100 as a kind of anchor point.
Oh, using 100. I feel like working with 100 is always a good strategy. Tell me more.
So we start by figuring out 15% of 100, which is, well, it's just 15. No calculations needed, really.
Makes sense. Everyone knows what 15% of 100 is.
And because we know 50 is exactly half of 100, we just cut that 15 right in half. And guess what? We're back to 7.5.
It's amazing how all these different roads lead back to the same destination.
Isn't it? And that's what's so key here. It's not about memorizing one right way to do it. It's about building up your understanding, your intuition, so you can choose the strategy that resonates most with you.
It's like having a toolbox full of different tools, and you become more confident knowing you have the right one for the job, or the one that just feels right even. It's amazing how a problem that seems so simple on the surface, like who would have thought there were so many ways to figure out 15% of 50? But it really highlights something important about, well, about everything, really, not just math.
Right. It's about thinking outside the box, right? Not limiting ourselves to just one way of doing things.
Exactly. Like, sometimes you can get stuck, thinking there's only one right way to do something, whether it's a work project or just trying to figure out how to organize your kitchen cupboards even. But then you find a different way and bam, it's like a whole new world of possibilities opens up.
Totally. And often those less conventional solutions end up being the most elegant. And that's true for any problem. You just got to be open to trying something new, something you maybe haven't seen before.
It's kind of freeing, Like, what would you say to someone who's maybe a little scared to try a new approach?
Yeah.
Especially if the old way, even if it's harder, feels more familiar.
I'd say don't be afraid to experiment. Embrace that curiosity. Because you might just stumble onto something truly brilliant, and it's incredibly empowering to find your own way to a solution. Just remember, like we've been saying, there isn't always one right answer in math or in life.
It's all about finding what works for you. It's like Pam Harris says, math is figure-out-able.
And you know what? Life is figure-outable too. Just got to be willing to be flexible, to play around with different ideas and see where they lead you. You never know what you'll discover.
That's such a great point to end on. So next time you're feeling stuck, remember those multiple approaches to 15% of 50. And don't be afraid to get creative, to find your own way. Until next time.